communities were so punitive on bad behavior. I mean, when you study African history, you would see that there were times when families were made outcasts within the community, sometimes for just the fact that somebody stole a goat. The sanctions regime in a pre-colonial African society was effective, and it was strong. It served as a very important deterrence. And it didn't matter, I mean, if in those days there had been anything like, leaders sort of trying to pervert the rules and to say, oh, we forgive you for your bad behavior, the citizens would not immediately forgive. They would want to see that there is indeed a remorseful and a trend of change that is so visible. So the legitimacy of punishing corruption or of condoning corruption lied within. It just lied in the society at that time. So the African society has not struggled. The pre-colonial African society did not struggle with the issues of corruption. Now, with independence, with colonialism and then subsequent independence, you see, there had to be a marriage of the Anglo-Saxon public sector. The Anglo-Saxon public sector, that is the Western public sector that independent Africa inherited, became a set of systems and rules and procedures, which unfortunately, in those days, there was not an effort to bridge them and to bring them into a place of convergence with the existing pre-colonial systems of values, of structures, of mechanisms for dealing with bad behavior. And so you see there is a disconnect in the society. There's almost an alienation of the citizens from the public service. So for example, I am an Igbo-speaking Nigerian. The public service in our language is called Oluoyibo, the white man's job. There's an alienation. It doesn't seem to be something that you own. And so that alienation created the gulf that we have seen over the decades manifest in the way that the relationship between the governance systems and the people has operated. So that's what you're struggling with to understand and sort of finding within the construct of history. We now need to say to ourselves, okay, it's been many years after independence. How do we redefine the kind of fundamental values that must underpin the choices we make, whether in government, in private sector, and in civil society?
Now, let's speak a little bit about perception, because you highlighted that in a way while you made your submissions just now. How is it that government almost always sees things differently from the citizenry, especially when it has to do with facts and figures, and then the indices or the index upon which corruption or performance is analyzed? You've been in government, and some time ago you spoke about what happened to the savings that we had, but government disagrees. So what goes on up there, and how does that disconnect happen? Is it deliberate or inadvertent?
What goes on up there, and how does that disconnect happen? Is it deliberate or inadvertent? That's a really clever question. I think that you have to understand that. Really clever question. I'm getting an echo, so I'm sorry that sometimes I kind of. Can you still hear me well? I am getting an echo.
Go ahead.
Okay. I was saying that this whole issue of disconnect between the way government sometimes says the facts and the way that the citizens say the facts is a matter of the tone that is set within government at any point in time. I believe that when we were in government, one of the things we did was we said to ourselves, we have to own Nigeria's corruption problem. You can't solve a problem that you have not taken ownership of. We knew we had a fundamental, serious problem of corruption. And it was going to stand in the way of everything we tried to do. We of course, didn't succeed in tackling a huge portion of the corruption that we met within the system. We did not. There's so much that is left to be achieved. But one thing that you could say was that we decided we were going to take ownership of the problem. You can't solve a problem you've not owned. And so if you define a problem as something that is raised simply because people don't like you or are opposed to you, that means you haven't owned the problem. And so that is something that is a unique characteristic of whoever sets the tone.
Now, the second part of the tripod which you talked about was structural changes. Well, only recently, in fact yesterday, while the president was speaking in Lagos on that economic forum, he talked about what the government is doing in the fight against corruption. For one, he says Nigeria was one of the first signatories to the Intergovernmental Action Group Against Money Laundering in West Africa, and he recently signed Anti-Money Laundering Act into law, and that was on the one hand. So they think the perception there from government now is we're doing something about this. Perhaps maybe not enough, but deliberately also trying to climb the ladder to show that we're not just watching things go wrong. What do you think about this one?
You know, like I said, I don't think that in terms of putting the sets of rules, having the procedures, the systems, the institutions, and sometimes even the structures, that you can debate that there has been a clear trend of having more of these. But the issue is in the implementation of the mandate. What do we see? And I think that that's what's important. Look, the world is talking more and more about results. Governance has to be about results. You know, the input is important, but frankly, everyone is looking for output and outcome. And there are two different things from input. So what needs to happen is that more has to be seen to have been done in ensuring that all the institutions and the legal underpinnings of those institutions are completely respected, and that the resourcing of these institutions and the kind of political signal that is given to these institutions to exercise their full mandate, that's going to be key in the assessment of how well we're doing. I remember that when we were in government, this whole money laundering thing had cost us big time. I went to a meeting of Transparency International in those days, and then I was told by the chairman of TI at that time, Peter Eigen, my dear friend, he said to me, he said, Obi, what happened to your country? How did you find yourselves in the FATF list of countries that have been sanctioned for non-cooperative, as a non-cooperative regime? And I said, I was completely taken aback because I didn't know that we had been on that list. And then, you know, many more work, and it turned out we had been on the FATF list of the OECD, and we had to work our way out of it. Part of working our way out of it was the work that Nuhu Ribadu subsequently did at the EFCC through I think it's a unit called the Investigative Financial Unit or something like that. And it's basically a unit that just is busy with ensuring the tracing of the movement of resources and being able to provide the necessary domestic support to any international partner, because it's a global framework. We need to do more. We need to be seen as doing more. Frankly, the cost of corruption to us as a nation is huge. For every Nigerian, it is a huge cost.
Well, I think that has actually taken us to the last part of your tripod which you gave, which is deterrence to corruption. Let's talk more on that and see if we're doing enough. You just took us down history, telling us about the works of Nuhu Ribadu, and at that point, when you were in office, what was said to you about Nigeria. compare that to what is happening now. Have we moved out of such labeling by the international